corruption. We've had to adjust. I mean, we now have laws against sexual harassment before, which probably weren't considered necessary in the 40s and 50s. We've had to have development of daycare, because women who have children want to make sure that they have someone who's around to take care of their children. There's a whole range of consequences, but I think it turned out to be an enhancement that greatly improves society. If you think about it, half the human race was being denied opportunities they should have had, and we were denied the benefits of their contributions. I mean, think of all the achievements that women have made in the sciences, the arts, and elsewhere that they probably wouldn't have been able to do without the development of this enhancement. So the idea that somehow, well, we have to balance the improvement of the individual, the benefit of the individual against the harms of society, and we can never have an enhancement if somehow the consequences are unpredictable. And when all the contraceptives came around, I mean, you really couldn't predict all the consequences they would have, I think is a non-starter for an argument. Again, that's not to say we shouldn't consider consequences to the extent we can predict them. But the idea that some kind of nebulous risk out there by itself is a reason to prevent development of enhancements, I think is just wrong. And frankly, I don't think you need a cognitive enhancement to reach that conclusion. So with that, I'll end my prepared remarks and I'll start dealing with some questions. Thank you. Let me address the question about social equality.
Right, so to take this example, what if it were available only to a select few of women? Like, however that is done, but like 1 or 5% of women instead of, in our society, the general availability that it has enjoyed over the last few decades. Like that's the reservation I have, particularly with cognitive enhancement.
Right. I agree. That's something to be concerned about. I'm not sure it's an argument that would necessarily, even if that were the case, and I'll explain why I don't think it will be the case. Even if that were the case, that's an argument against enhancements. Because if in fact, enhancements do improve the capabilities of some people, by itself, is that a bad thing? It almost seems like an argument based on envy. Well, gee, this person's had certain advantages I don't have. The way society is right now, that's true. I mean, the wealthy, for example, have a lot of advantages that the rest of us, and maybe there are wealthy individuals here, but I'm not one of them, that we don't have. They get, for example, typically to have better education for their children, private education, best schools, private tutors for themselves. They can get the same sort of education that they want. And do people think it's a bad thing? Well, I mean, what else do we want to have the rich spend on? I mean, that's it. I mean, obviously, they have this argument. I say, okay, so if that's the argument, and the wealthy can't spend money to improve themselves or their children, does that mean, well, we want them to spend on bigger houses or buy a yacht or what have you? I mean,
I think the argument is the self-reinforcing nature. So we talked earlier about social mobility being a desirable thing. So if we introduce a whole suite of opportunities, technologies, advancements, whether they're pharmacological or genetic in nature, the opportunity for someone who does not have access to any of them to become part of to get access to that bridge will be, or that divide will grow ever wider. Again, on the assumption of limited availability. And there are those that say that these advantages that the wealthy do have is not desirable if it prevents others from obtaining those types of advantages. And I'm certainly not advocating that we strike down the rich, but that if we pursue technologies or we pursue public policies that only reinforces the existing strata, that may not be a desirable set of public policies to pursue.
Right, and I would agree with you to the extent that there are great disparities among certain strata of society. probably not a good thing, certainly in terms of preserving democratic society, if it becomes so wide. And, you know, some people who really believe in enhancement say, well, basically we're going to have these transhumans or superhumans. And if in fact we had a set of, you know, 3% of us that were superhumans, the rest of us had, let's say, normal capacities, for want of a better term, that could be a problem, right? Because, you know, they'll be able to do things we can't do. We're going to feel like second-class citizens. Well, first of all, I just don't see that as realistic, because presumably, while this is going on, we're not going to be standing by. It's not like the, you know, enhancement revolution is going to happen overnight, and the super enhanced are going to seize power. Like, you know, they're working in a laboratory somewhere. They're going to come out the next day, and, you know, they have IQs, 300, and, you know, the superhuman strength, and they've got bosses around, right? While this process is going on, we'll be debating it and thinking about what regulations should be in place to control the process. So I'm in favor of regulations to ensure that the disparity doesn't become too huge. But I don't think that's an argument for stopping, for example, research on enhancements, or, you know, testing them to see what effects they will have. Because if in fact we ban enhancements, who's going to have the enhancements? Because one thing that wealth gives you is a way to get things illegally that other people can't get, right?
And
so,
I think that's fair. I mean,
right.
I'm certain, as an individual, I'm not saying that pharmacological or genetic enhancements in principle are evil and should be banned, but I have reservations and do not, at least at present, feel that wholesale acceptance prima facie is the way to go. I mean, I think that it requires a great deal of thought and reservation and regulation, and with you know, qualifications analogous to the Oregon euthanasia, where there's checks and balances to that, where you can't just say, my girlfriend, my boyfriend just broke up with me. I'm going to a pharmacy, here's $20, please give me a pill.
Right.
That's the sort of reservations that I have, and I didn't get the same sense of considered qualification of acceptance of these principles from your presentation,
right,
as in the right to die segment.
Right. Well, as I said, actually, I addressed the equality argument in the book. This was devoted more to the kind of the argument that somehow there's something inherently wrong about enhancements. I think
fair enough.
The concerns about social equality are important, although again, sometimes I think they're overstated. Another thing I'll point out is, you know, some people say, well, gee, that means the government has to control enhancements. We can't let private industry control enhancements. I'm not so sure. And if you look at the history of technological improvements, for example, every new technology that's come out usually has been available only to the wealthy at first. It was true with radios, it was true with TVs, it was true with personal computers. Usually when they first come out of the market, they're prohibitively expensive, very few people could afford them. Then what happens is that over time, because if you have for-profit companies, they want to make a profit. And you know, if you can only sell a computer to 1,000 people because it costs $50,000, that's not going to be as good as selling a computer that costs $1,000 to 100 million people. You just make more money if, in fact, you can lower the price and make it more widely available. So I think if we develop enhancement technology, and if, in fact, private companies are doing it, they're going to see as wide a market as possible. I shouldn't be, when I made that statement before, people say, oh, you don't want the government to regulate at all. No, I'm not saying that. First of all, the government has to regulate these because they're drugs, have to be tested for their safety and efficacy and all that. So yeah, there is going to be government regulation. And as I said, if, for example, it seems like there's a huge inequity in access, I think the government can craft regulations to address that issue. And I think, as I said, if we live in a democracy, presumably those of us who are concerned about that